100 years ago, West Central Florida saw its last major hurricane. It all started on October 20th, 1921, when observations at the time showed a tropical low forming in the southern Caribbean Sea. Over the next few days, the storm would quickly intensify to a Category 4 storm as it pushed north, passing between the Yucatan Peninsula and Cuba. After that, the storm started moving northeast and then east as it set its eye on West Central Florida. The hurricane did weaken slightly to a Category 3 before making landfall in Tarpon Springs with max winds of 115 miles an hour. The hurricane caused 8 deaths and at least $10 million in damage, which is equivalent to around $120 million today. Throughout this video, we will be discussing how the hurricane shaped Tampa Bay as we know it today and how it affected different communities across West Central Florida. We will start just south of Tampa Bay, in the town of Cortez, where a schoolhouse protected a town. Prior to the hurricane of 1921, Cortez was a small but successful fish town that was about to get busier with a brand new bridge being constructed to lead out to Anna Maria Island. However, the hurricane of 1921 had other plans. Even though the hurricane made landfall well to the north along the coast of Tarpon Springs, the storm created powerful storm surge that swept across Cortez and could have easily swept away many in the town if it wasn't for the schoolhouse.
But also, it served as a storm shelter, as it's one of the highest points in Cortez.
Unfortunately, the water was rising so quickly that some people had to use boats like this just to get to the schoolhouse. Luckily, everyone survived thanks to the schoolhouse. However, sadly, the town did not. Almost every other structure on the waterfront was destroyed or damaged, including the bridge. However, the town came together and rebuilt the bridge and many of the other structures and homes. Cortez still stands as a great local fishing town. Now let's move north into St. Pete to see how the hurricane reshaped the city and its fishing piers.
While the southern part of Pinellas County didn't take the direct hit from the 1921 hurricane, we all know that impacts are felt well away from the center of tropical systems, and the St. Petersburg and Gulfport areas were no exception to this. In the very early 1900s, a trolley line from St. Petersburg was connected to Gulfport, with the idea that boats could carry passengers to Pass a Grill. In 1905, a 700-foot dock was built out into the bay, and then in 1906, the Gulfport Casino was constructed. This building was less of a casino by the modern-day definition, and more of a way station and ticket office. It also contained a post office, snack stand, and souvenir shop. The second floor also featured a more social area, with a pavilion and dance floor complete with a stage. The 1921 hurricane destroyed the wooden casino in Gulfport, which was rebuilt twice and then finally added to the National Register of Historic Places on August 8, 2014, and today serves as a venue for dancing, weddings, and community events. In St. Petersburg, the famous shell fence was destroyed, and the St. Petersburg Yacht Club also suffered significant flooding. There were also several original fishing piers, which were used for commerce, tourism, and recreation. The first pier even served as headquarters for the St. Petersburg-Tampa airboat line, which made the world's first scheduled commercial flight on January 1, 1914. Tides well above normal from the 1921 storm destroyed all of them. The St. Pete Pier today stands as a symbol both for the city's history and present day, serving as one of the premier destinations for tourists and locals alike.
Next, let's look at storm surge and how it affected the area during the hurricane of 1921 and how it could also affect the area today.
Storm surge is one of the main reasons for prompting coastal evacuations as a hurricane threatens an area. According to a 2012 study, Southwest Florida and the Tampa Bay area are the number 1 and number 2 most difficult areas in the United States to evacuate. We can look to the hurricane of 1921 to see what could be possible if a major hurricane were to strike in the Tampa Bay area. This storm brought surge up to 11 feet inside of Tampa Bay and around downtown Tampa. To try to help visualize this threat, Hillsborough County received a grant to post signs around the Tampa Bay area within the county to show just how high storm surge could reach from a major hurricane. This map shows a selection of where these signs are located. We took a trip to a few of these signs for a closer look, the following one on Countryway Boulevard between Oldsmar and West Chase.
The sign to my right is approximately 12 feet tall. I'm about 5'10". This sign represents approximately how high a storm surge could get if a major hurricane were to impact Tampa Bay.
To remain safe from hazards, including storm surge, you must first have a plan and know your zone. To find out what evacuation zone your home is located in, go to floridadisaster.org/knowyourzone and enter your address to look it up. Evacuation zones can also be viewed by specific county, in this case Hillsborough County, with a focus on the Tampa area. The different colors represent the different evacuation zones, with red being Zone A, orange Zone B, yellow Zone C, green Zone D, and purple Zone E. If your home is not under one of these shaded areas, then it is not within an evacuation zone. The only exception to this is manufactured homes, which regardless of where they are located, may also be required to evacuate with any given zone due to wind concerns. Now that you know whether you might have to evacuate or shelter in place, create a plan. Build a supply kit. Know where you would go if you have to evacuate, and remember this only needs to be a sturdy shelter outside of the evacuation zone, not hundreds of miles away. Create a checklist to secure your home, either before you leave or as you take shelter. Visit ready.gov for helpful tools to create this plan.
We will now go to Tampa to see how the hurricane affected that area and see how far inland the storm surge really got.
Looking out to the bay, you probably think that this body of water is really deep, but in reality, it's pretty shallow.
When it comes to Tampa Bay, the thing that we often don't think about is the shape of the bay and also the topography, how the bay itself is shaped underneath. Outside of the shipping channel, most of the bay is less than 20 feet deep. So when a hurricane approaches the coastline and takes the perfect path, that means all the water is forced up along the shoreline because it has nowhere else to go.
So we're here at the Riverwalk, a very popular place that is usually packed with visitors and residents alike. It might be hard to imagine, but in 1921, when the hurricane was making landfall in Tarpon Springs, downtown Tampa was getting flooded, including this area.
In the case of the 1921 hurricane, water was forced out of Tampa Bay and into the streets of Tampa. Reports from that day suggest waves were breaking almost in the streets of Ybor City.
The old timers on the tugboats would talk about that storm, 21, and one of the things that they said they did was pulled ships out of Franklin Street downtown. So that shows you in a real hurricane what we could be looking at here. And I think since it's been so long that it's happened, that a lot of people don't imagine that it could happen, but it definitely can happen.
Impacts from the 1921 hurricane were felt from Tarpon Springs, across the Bay Area, and down south into the Sarasota and Bradenton area as well.
Hurricanes not only destroy, but they can also create new land and new passes along the coast.
The barrier islands of northern Pinellas County used to consist of Hog Island, then Big Pass or Dunedin Pass, then Clearwater Beach. But the hurricane of 1921 changed all that when it carved Hog Island into two, creating what we now know as Honeymoon Island to the north and Caladesi Island to the south. This new pass that was created is behind me and is now called Hurricane Pass. It was created over the course of several hours as the 1921 hurricane was bearing down on the area. The strong winds blew across the island and created a pressure differential, which lowered the water levels on the intercoastal waterway. This created a strong current, and as the surge pushed higher, a breach occurred in the narrowest point on the island. The current got stronger and stronger through the breach as the surge continued to rise, up to 9 feet at this location, and scoured a channel to a depth of 20 feet, creating this new pass. This permanently rerouted the flow of water and became the major entrance and exit point for the intercoastal waterway for northern Pinellas County. This also eventually caused Big Pass or Dunedin Pass to fill in with sand, and now connects Calidisi Island with Clearwater Beach. This phenomena of major hurricanes creating new passes is nothing new, though. The 1921 hurricane also created Redfish Pass in Lee County, first dividing Captiva Island, and in Sarasota County, a transient pass known as Little Sarasota Pass was redefined by the storm, creating a more permanent location a little further south that originally became known as Musketeers Pass, but since the 1950s is called Midnight Pass. The Great Hurricane of 1848 created both Johns Pass, a little further south of here in Pinellas County, as well as New Pass in Sarasota County. In 2004, Hurricane Charlie created a new pass in Upper Captiva Island, and in 2018, Hurricane Michael created a new pass in Cape San Blas. Just something to think about as we contemplate the idea of a major hurricane possibly striking the west central Florida coastline again.
And finally, let's not forget about Tarpon Springs, where the Category 3 storm made direct landfall.
During the afternoon of October 25th, 1921, the west coast of Florida was impacted by a major Category 3 hurricane. The eye of the hurricane pushed ashore near Tarpon Springs, very near where this video was taken, the present-day location of Fred Howard Park. Winds along the coast reached over 100 miles an hour, downing many trees and causing damage to numerous homes and businesses, such as these along the present-day drive into Tarpon Springs. The worst of the conditions affected Tarpon Springs during the afternoon hours, as roofs were blown away and countless windows blown out. The strong winds resulted in heavy losses for the southern utilities and peninsular telephone companies, with extensive repairs needed to wires and poles. Highest water levels associated with the storm surge from the hurricane arrived just after the highest winds, leading to waves breaking over the seawalls and water backing up into waterfront streets, flooding popular present-day locations and tourist attractions with several feet of water. Further up the coast in Newport Richey, extensive damage was reported as well. Structural and agricultural damage alike were widespread. The Community Congregational Church in Newport Richey, which was under construction at the time, had its south wall blown out and a quarter of its roof destroyed. Another church had its bell tower toppled by the hurricane, while there was also damage to the Baptist and Methodist churches of the community. The Industry Park area, home to many various industries at the time, was heavily damaged, along with nearly all stores suffering some type of damage, many from water. A local floral company lost their greenhouse along with hundreds of trees and thousands of plants and flowers. The citrus industry, a principal industry for much of the area, suffered greatly. Across Pasco County, an estimated 50% of citrus fruits were blown off of trees, with some individual groves losing up to 90% of their citrus crop. This rendered the year's citrus crop nearly a total loss, with 6 of the major groves across the county only able to export very little, if any, fruit for the season. All told, damage totaled into the millions. Thankfully, however, loss of life remained very low.